Moin! What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Mace. I am coming to you from Canada. I'm in British Columbia, here on the West Coast, specifically on Vancouver Island. Let me know in the comments if you've been over here. I used to work at the airports and in the tourism industry, and I would often see German tourists and families and people coming in. Always very pleasant, straightforward, but very, very polite and respectful. I even helped a German couple one time, and they were so thankful, so thankful. It was something that I still remember from my days working at the airports. They had some baggage, a baggage issue, and their baggage was left behind, and I kind of sorted everything out for them because I think they were a bit overwhelmed with the entire situation, and I made sure that their luggage came in and it was delivered to them, and they were so thankful. And then when they came back through the airport, they remembered me, and they were so nice. But let's check out this video. Why was Bonn the capital of West Germany? Interesting. The capital of Germany now is Berlin, and Berlin is in East Germany. But yeah, you'd think the capital of West Germany would have been, I'm not even that familiar with Bonn. I think of cities like Frankfurt, Munich, but I'm not so familiar with, or Cologne. I'm not so familiar with Bonn. Let's check it out. Let's get to it. Hope everyone's doing great. Let's go.
After its defeat in World War II, Germany was split into two parts. East Germany with its capital of Berlin, and West Germany with its...
What was the initial map ratio there? It was showing...
Germany was split into two parts. East Germany with its capital of Berlin, and West Germany with its capital of Bonn, which is here and had a population of about 110,000 people in a nation of about 50 million. And given that there were much larger, more important cities in West Germany at the time, why was Bonn chosen as its capital? So as of 1949, Germany was divided into four parts, and the three controlled by the Western powers were merged into the Federal Republic of Germany. With the Allies preparing to hand over the role of civilian government to the West Germans, the first thing that needed to be picked was where this government would operate from.
110,000, while not insubstantial, is pretty low population-wise, right?
And the temporary location chosen was Bonn. This was because Bonn was one of the larger towns in West Germany that had been bombed to ruins. However, it was only supposed to be a stopgap until the politicians of West Germany could pick a new capital. So why did they keep it there? Well, there were many reasons, and numerous larger cities were put forward. Frankfurt, Cologne and Munich were candidates for the capital, but all of them were somewhat bombed and occupied. The buildings that were still standing were either being used as emergency housing or by the Allied armies as bases. As such, the West German government would need to spend considerable sums of money to build a new parliament, as well as the massive infrastructure needed to support it. Money which many at the time felt that the government didn't have. Furthermore, German Chancellor Konrad Adenauer and his opponent Kurt Schumacher didn't want the West German capital to be somewhere with lots of foreign troops around. Schumacher soon found himself a little bit dead, and his successors pushed for Frankfurt because of its central location.
You just say he found himself a little bit dead?
Schumacher soon found himself a little bit dead, and his successors pushed for Frankfurt because of its central location. They weren't in power though, so it wasn't up to them and largely fell to Adenauer and his party to decide. Adenauer didn't want the Federal Republic's new capital to be a major city because he felt that such a move would look permanent, and thus it would appear to be a concession that Germany would remain divided forever. Another concern was that the new capital couldn't be anywhere with a strong association with the previous regime. With this in mind, Adenauer needed to find a small town without Allied troops with no connection to the war that was large enough to house a parliament, which didn't leave much. The French refused to withdraw from any town in their former occupation zone since they saw it as a sign of weakness, whereas the Americans preferred that the new government would be seated in a larger city, but they also refused to remove their soldiers from there. This left only the British, who had already agreed to withdraw forces from Bonn, not because of any sympathy towards German feeling, but because not stationing troops in a town is cheaper than stationing troops in a town, and Britain was broke. Bonn had a lot of
I guess, yeah, at the end of the day, right, it all comes down to moolah. Ooh, it comes down to the money. Show me the money, Tom Cruise.
bombed unoccupied buildings that were suitable for use and also had nothing to do with the previous regime. In fact, it was the birthplace of Beethoven and thus appealed to a vision of Germany distinct from its Prussian or imperial past. And another bonus was that it was only a 20-minute drive from Adenauer's house. And given that the government was already there, they just, chose to stay. And in fact, when Germany reunited in 1990, there was a vote to move the capital from Bonn to Berlin. Most West German politicians voted for it to remain in Bonn. However, when the votes of East German politicians were included, it tipped the balance by a mere 18 votes. And thus Berlin took over as the new capital of a united Germany. I hope you enjoyed this episode, with a special thanks to my patrons, James Bizanet, Kelly Moneymaker.
Interesting. So, it was essentially because they didn't want the capital to be somewhere where they had to spend too much money to build the infrastructure for parliament. And they didn't want it to be somewhere that had any associations to the previous regime that we don't need to mention, but we know what it was. Directly preceding the defeat of the National Socialist Party. And they also didn't want it somewhere where there was a lot of foreign troops still stationed. Frankfurt, Cologne, Munich probably would have, those were the bigger cities, maybe more obvious choices. It's interesting. Let's take a look at Bonn. I don't know a lot about Bonn. James Bonn. No, I'm just kidding. Bonn, Germany. Let's check it out. City in Germany. Bonn is a federal city in the German state of North Rhine-Westphalia, located on the banks of the Rhine, with a population exceeding 300,000 nowadays. So it was about 110,000 in 1940, what did they say, 49? It lies about 24 kilometers southeast of Cologne. Oh. It's only 24 kilometers from Cologne? Is it part of the Cologne metropolitan area? So it's essentially Cologne. I mean it's not, but it's pretty darn close. Let's look at some pictures of Bonn, Germany. I want to see in relationship. Okay, let's pull up the map. Maps. Probably like nowadays probably looks more or less like one big city. So Bonn, that must be Cologne. Okay. So yeah, just south of Cologne. What's another bigger city? Dusseldorf is there. Wuppertal. Frankfurt is quite a bit farther away. Meaning Bielefeld. Cool. Well, interesting. It's let me know, you guys, if any of you guys live in Bonn or the surrounding areas. Interesting little short video. It's a very, very, very micro topic. It's like bite-sized info. Good stuff. All right. See you all soon. I will be back shortly. Tschüss.